I was signing y'all about Rico from Street Scores, and man, what a way to end the season, man. I don't want to talk too much about the draft positioning. We're going to talk about that a little bit later, but winning the game, we do go from 14th to 16th, which isn't that bad, and it always feels good to beat Dallas. It always feels good to beat the Cowboys, especially the way that we did. I'm not in the DMV, so I don't have any Cowboys fans to talk trash to, but for those of y'all that happen to be in the DMV or happen to be in Dallas or anywhere where there are a lot of Cowboys fans, more power to y'all. I hope y'all talk every bit of trash, just like Sam Howell did for a little bit in his post-game speech. If you haven't seen that, I posted the clip of the Ron Rivera after the game, post-game locker room speech with Sam Howell got to talk, Khalid Hudson got to talk. Sam Howell talked a little bit of trash to them Cowboys, so I can't wait for that rivalry to spark back up. I mean, the rivalry's pretty much been dead because we haven't been good enough for it to really be a true rivalry lately. But I like the fact that we won the way that we did, and the fact that the quarterback that did it chose to speak some trash after the end of the game. I loved it. Make sure you go check that out. But speaking of rivalries, now the NFC East winners over the past 17 seasons have been all completely different division winners. With the Eagles winning it in 2022, you have different winners going all the way back to 2005, and that's the longest streak of any division in NFL history with no repeat winners. It's always somebody different. We got it in 2012, 2015, and 2020. Nobody since 2005 has won it twice in a row. That is crazy. Also, just remember, this was probably Dan Snyder's last game along with Scott Turner's more than likely as well. So I'm assuming that he will end up selling the team. The only thing is, though, and I keep trying to tell people this, for those of y'all who want Ron Rivera gone, Scott Turner's one thing. I think Scott Turner's pretty much the writings on the wall. He's gone. Ron Rivera-wise, though, the team won't be sold till like March or April. And by then, the hiring of a head coach, like the hiring cycle is gone. That window's pretty much gone. You should have a head coach before then. There's no way you hire a new head coach after free agency. So Ron Rivera is going to be here for at least another year. And I think with Sam Howell at the quarterback, which is one of the main things we have to talk about, is Sam Howell our QB1 going into 2023? Will he be our franchise quarterback? Is that the best decision? Or should we go and try to get like a CJ Stroud and let him compete with Sam Howell or whatever? Or maybe you throw Sam Howell out there next year as a starter. If he's great, franchise quarterback. If he's terrible, go get Caleb Williams or Drake May. We're going to dive into all of that, and of course I'll be discussing all of that throughout the offseason. Just because the Commander season is over does not mean the Street Score season is over. So I'm still doing live streams on Sundays. We'll just talk draft, free agency, and we'll be watching the playoffs games together, so we'll talk about that as well. I'm going to open up the phone lines for y'all to call in, all of that. But yeah, man, Dan Snyder, probably his last game as an owner. And speaking of that, Dan Snyder was not at that game at the Cowboys. His wife was. Tanya Snyder was there, but Dan Snyder wasn't. Also, moving on to Scott Turner, Ron Rivera said in his press conference after the game that he'll evaluate his coaching staff over the next 2 weeks. And to me, that just sounds like basically he's just buying time to see who he could potentially bring in to replace Scott Turner with. He doesn't want to announce that he's going to fire Scott Turner if he doesn't have a quality replacement there just yet. So I'm pretty sure Scott Turner's on the way out pretty much no matter what, but maybe he doesn't want to show his cards, and you don't want to prematurely fire Scott Turner and you don't have somebody better in place. I mean, I'm pretty sure a lot of y'all feel like anybody is better than Scott Turner, but I'm telling y'all, it could get worse. It could get worse. It could definitely get better. There's a lot of candidates that I want, but at the same time, it's going to be kind of difficult to take a guy who's an offensive coordinator somewhere else and bring him as an offensive coordinator here. Usually guys try to move, vertically rather than laterally and go from offensive coordinator on one team to head coach to the next team. And like I said, Ron Rivera is going to have to be here this next year at the very least. So I just think it's really interesting trying to figure out who are even like the potential offensive coordinator like options that we have. Like, I don't want to promote Ken Zampese from QB's coach to offensive coordinator because I'm not too sure about him. Maybe Ron Rivera brings around an old friend like he typically likes to do. I would prefer other teams' offensive coordinators, but again, that's difficult. Either way, he said that he wants to evaluate this coaching staff over the next couple of weeks, which pretty much means like, yeah, they're on the way out, but I don't want to fire these guys until I have the guy that's ready to replace them already in writing, and we already got that in motion type of thing. And also, before we dive into everything, because y'all know me, man, with Street Scores, all of these review videos, we're going to dive into every player, every position group, the coaches, all of that type of stuff. We're going to dive into everything. Whether they played well, poorly, whoever, or even each of individual player, if they had good plays or bad plays, we're going to talk about both sides of it. But before we do all of that, just the fact that we couldn't beat the Browns when we needed to win, but then we beat the Cowboys when we shouldn't win, that just goes to show who this franchise is. I mean, to me, this was worst case scenario. I was been saying that Sam Howell should have came in in replacement of Carson Wentz after the Bears game, that Packers game, and just go ahead and start him for the rest of the season. I kept saying, though, even back then, Sam Howell may not be better than Taylor Heinicke today, but if you start him against the Packers, maybe by the time we play the Giants, he is better, and maybe we win enough games to make it to the playoffs. Because like I said, that Packers game may be different, because that would have been Sam Howell's first start, and Taylor Heinicke actually played fairly well in that Packers game. But the Colts game, we won in spite of him. I mean, he was good the last 4 or 5 minutes, but the reason that we even had to score 14 points in 5 minutes, we had 0 points up until that point, was because Taylor Heinicke was so bad. Then the Vikings game, he sold away. We should have beat them. We were winning in spite of him some games, honestly. And I felt like by at least the Giants game, Sam Howell would have been better than Taylor Heinicke. We wouldn't even be in this situation. He probably is good enough to beat the Browns and all of that. So you never know. That's my point. But as far as that goes, as far as the pick thing goes, granted, we do move from 14 to 16, but we have good luck with that 16th pick. Remember last year we had the 16th pick and we ended up with Jahan Dotson. So, that 16th pick isn't all bad. I would have preferred to have the 14th because you never know what may happen, but Jahan Dotson was the 16th pick. I will take it, even though we had to make some moves to, get that pick and all of that. But still, great pick regardless. But before we dive into everything, and again, we're going to go position group by position group. We're going to talk about every player, especially a lot of the young guys that stepped up today, getting a lot of more playing time than they normally do, with a lot of the starters out, resting, going to IR, getting surgery and things like that. We got a chance to see Khaleke Hudson. We got a chance to see Percy Butler quite a bit. We got to see a lot of Jared Patterson. We got to see a lot of Chris Paul. Of course, Sam Howell, a lot of guys. And I want to talk about those guys a lot as well, because that's very important as far as the future of this team, as far as depth goes especially. But also, we may have some potential starters out of those guys, and some potential strong contributors to the team. But before we dive into all of that, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell next to the subscription button so you get a notification immediately. And every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one, like I said, man, make sure you pull up every weekend still, because just because the Commander season is over does not mean the Street Score season is over. Y'all know I do my best work in the offseason. I got mock drafts, free agency wish list, best case scenario, and the most realistic scenario. I have off-season dream case scenarios where I'll talk about cap space, free agency, and draft all in one. It's like one big plan. We could go this option or we could go this option, all of that type of stuff. Franchise quarterback, offensive line, cornerback, linebacker, everything. So make sure y'all stay tuned, man, because I'm coming with live streams, with call-in shows where y'all can call in and give your opinions on free agency and draft stuff and all of that. So make sure you keep pulling up on Sundays as well. And without further ado, let's get it. All right, so I feel like it's only right to start with the quarterback position. We always do anyway, but at least we finally got a quarterback that could actually give us a pretty good lead. I mean, this was the first game all season that it didn't feel like I was biting my nails to the end at all. I mean, the Texans game was the only other one that was even relatively close, and even that game was closer than this one. And the Texans are definitely a worse team than the Cowboys. We should have ran through the Texans, but between Taylor Heinicke not having the best of games, and then I think it's more so like a Scott Turner or Ron Rivera issue where we get passive. Once we get a good enough lead, we don't try to run up the score, we just get passive. So I'm not going to blame the quarterback for that, but still, Sam Howell did his thing. Now, granted, when you look at his stat line, it's not that impressive. 11 of 19, 169 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and 3 sacks. That doesn't sound that great, but when you think about the fact that he had 2 drops, most notably one to Jahan Dotson where it was kind of a passing interference, that should have been a deep bomb for like 50 yards, so he should have cracked 200 just off of that. And who knows what happens throughout that drive, because I believe we ended up going 3 and out after that. And if that drive continues, maybe he gets more yards, maybe he gets another touchdown. So it's a lot of domino effect type of things. But I'm gonna also blame Scott Turner more so for Sam Howell's underwhelming stat line, because I felt like we ran the ball way too too much. Win or loss, again, winning doesn't mean anything. I think the most important thing was, first of all, to evaluate everybody. Of course, I like seeing Jared Patterson get all of those carries because I like Jared Patterson. But I felt like this was the perfect opportunity to open up the playbook and just let Sam Howell slang it. Throw it at least 30 times, not 19. Just let him slang it. If he fails, he fails, but at least give him some tape to watch. Again, even worst case scenario, you let him throw it 30 times rather than 19, and he's terrible. At least you have a bunch of tape and a bunch of reps, a bunch of throws to look at throughout the entire offseason, to look at over and over again and coach him up. Like, do this with your footwork. Don't do this with your footwork. Do this with your eyes. Don't do that with your eyes. Make these throws. Don't make all that type of stuff. Whereas 19 throws, granted, it was a really good 19 throws for the most part, even though some of it was bad. He was not perfect today. I'm not giving him an A+ like some people probably feels like he was. I would give him probably like a B, but not a B+. He wasn't that fantastic. He was better than probably anything we would have gotten from Taylor Heinicke or Carson Wentz anyway, and that's why I feel like if we would have started him sooner, maybe by now when we play the Cowboys last game of the season, he gives you an A+ game because he's gotten the reps in. He's not just a straight rookie anymore. We got to remember this was his first NFL career start. And I feel like ultimately he was better than Taylor Heinicke and Carson Wentz, but I feel like by now, if we would have started him since the Packers game, he would have been way better, and he wouldn't have gone 11 for 19 in this Cowboys game. He would have been more prepared. Maybe the coaching staff would trust him more, and then maybe they would have opened up the offense by then. Either way, I felt like this was the time to just open up the offense, let him slang it around. If he balls out, he balls out. If he doesn't, he doesn't. But now he only has 11 completions and 19 attempts to really just watch film on throughout the entire offseason until we get to like early training camp OTAs and stuff like that. That's all he has to work with. Whereas if you would have started him sooner, or at least in this Cowboys game, you would have opened up the offense and just let him make the decisions, then we would have a lot more tape to go off of. Now, one thing I did like that Scott Turner did, he did a lot wrong, but today, one thing that he did do well was that he allowed Sam Howell to control the offense as far as the read option. We ran quite a few read option plays and let Sam Howell make the decision. Do you hand it off to the running back? Do you keep it? Do you throw it? And I felt like Sam Howell passed that test, so I'm really happy we got to see some of that as well, because that's not as easy as it seems. But yeah, man, I mean, Sam Howell had that beautiful deep ball. He had a couple of really good passes to slants across the middle to Jahan and Terry McLaurin, one of them for his touchdown. I mean, that was his first NFL pass is a touchdown. That's ridiculous. That's a crazy story that if we look back 15 years from now and he's been our franchise quarterback, hopefully won a Super Bowl or two, that is a great like folklore that it sounds like Disney wrote for somebody. Your first NFL pass is a touchdown. That's insane. Shouts out to the Dallas Cowboys for that terrible special teams for even putting them in position to do that. Shouts out to them, man. They really gave us this game. We kept trying to give it back, especially with Joey Sly. We'll talk about that later. We kept trying to give this game back to them, but the Cowboys just didn't want to take it. I guess the game-winning ball was hot. It was a hot potato or something. I don't know. But, man, shouts out to Sam Howell. I felt like he did really well today. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even necessarily great. He had a lot of great moments, but I wouldn't say he necessarily had a great game. But, again, my point is it was better than anything we probably would have gotten from Taylor Heinicke or Carson Wentz anyway. And my point is also if he would have been playing since the Packers game, he probably would have been better by now. By the way, I'll take it. But yeah, I'm happy that they at least trusted Sam Howell with that to run the read option, and that's some more tape they can look at. But I mean, the beautiful deep bomb to Terry McLaurin in stride, perfect. The slants, he didn't throw them behind, late, early, ahead, nothing. Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson were able to catch them and keep running at full speed. And then the play where he ran with his legs, that was not an open touchdown. When he did the read option and held onto it, he had to dodge one tackle and then run through two defenders to get that touchdown. Sam Howell does, I mean, Taylor Heinicke doesn't do that. Taylor Heinicke is, you could argue, maybe just as fast as Sam Howell straight line, but as far as agility goes, Sam Howell is a way better runner with the football, like a straight running back than Taylor Heinicke. Power-wise, as far as running through people, and agility, Sam Howell is definitely more agile, has better feet when running with the ball. He can move side to side better than Taylor Heinicke. I don't think Taylor Heinicke gets it. And then, of course, Carson Wentz doesn't get it. I feel like I have a better chance of getting a touchdown on that play than Carson Wentz. But Sam Howell just gives you things that no other quarterback on this roster this year gave us at any point, especially not consistently and most of the time. I mean, just imagine how crazy Sam Howell highlight tape would be if we would have started him since the Packers game. Either way, congratulations to Sam Howell. I don't want to dive too much into his negatives. I think the biggest negative is that his footwork is still inconsistent. Even though some of those throws he threw off his back foot, he kind of had to, because offensive line just opened the floodgates and allowed a blitzer to come straight into his chest a couple of them times. With like that one underthrow he had to Terry McLaurin where it ended up being a pass interference like in the first quarter or something like that. He had to throw it off his back foot because as soon as he hiked it, there's a linebacker in his face almost as quick as the ball got there. So, but overall, he did have bad footwork. I'm gonna look at the All-22. I may do an All-22 film breakdown on Sam Howell's performance against the Cowboys. So be on the lookout for that. I probably will do that. But from what I've seen so far, just live bad footwork, a couple of bad decisions, especially that one interception in the end zone. That was a terrible decision. That was his worst decision and his worst throw of the day, all in one play. Again, he wasn't perfect, but if I had to give him a grade, I'd probably give him a flat B. Not a B plus, definitely not an A minus. But I don't think he was bad enough to say he was like a C plus, maybe a BB minus, somewhere around there. Good, not great, but also not as bad as what we've been getting from the other two quarterbacks that's been playing for us, because boy. And then I'm just really happy, man. I saw a lot of pocket awareness. I mean, it just seemed like he could feel pressure better than Taylor Heinicke, and he for sure could feel it better than Carson Wentz, because Taylor Heinicke can feel it better than Carson Wentz. I love the arm talent. I mean, the arm strength is there, hitting guys in stride. My main point was in the stream that, I mean, you would probably be shocked to hear how little Sam Howell has thrown any passes to Terry McLaurin or Jahan Dotson all year, like ever, at any point in practice, off season, whatever. And so the fact that he was able to hit those guys in stride, especially that deep ball to Terry McLaurin, is very impressive. And I can't wait to see what he does with an entire off season, with him at the very least having a chance to be QB1. Even if, you know, we don't go in saying he's automatically QB1 as of the off season, at the very least, if he's competing for QB1, like given like an honest QB competition, I think those first team reps that he would finally get would pay dividends. So I'm really happy about that, man. I'm really excited. Good touch, accuracy, all of that. Really excited about his future. And before we move on, and I think we should also incorporate a lot of read option, run a straight college offense almost with him, because the Cowboys looked like they didn't know what to do when we ran the read option in certain situations. Then off of that, to do play action when they bite on the run, you saw the run lanes were opening up with the read option. They ain't know who, it was just crazy. So keep doing that. Our next offensive coordinator needs to look at this game and make sure he takes some of the positives from that game and then incorporate his own stuff, call the right plays, and we should be straight. Sam Howell 2023, I'm cool with it. And then if he sucks, you can get Caleb Williams and Drake May in the next draft. But I feel like prioritizing the offensive line in free agency, corner, linebacker, and some offensive line in the draft, I think we'll be straight with Sam Howell going forward. Because with as great as our defense was when healthy at times this year, literally playing like a top 5 defense at times, and you could argue even the best defense in the NFL in certain games, especially certain parts of games, and then getting Chase Young back and stuff like that. And then the run game is potent, and we have some of the one of the more elite receiving cores in the NFL. We just need a quarterback to not be bad. You don't even have to be great. Just be at least a little above average, and we could be at the very least in the playoffs right now, let alone maybe even Super Bowl contenders. So Sam Howell doesn't have to be Pat Mahomes. He doesn't have to be Josh Allen. But just don't be Taylor Heinicke and Carson Wentz, and we should be straight. But either way, moving on, before we dive into the other position groups, just want to talk about Scott Turner. There were a lot of bad play calls out there. He had a couple of good ones, and I felt like he utilized Sam Howell's skill sets pretty well at times. But my biggest complaint is that we didn't open the playbook up more, because, like, what are we being conservative about? We're up, 13-6 or something like that. What are we running the ball, trying to run the clock out for? Like, this win matters that much. Like, why are we playing it safe? Open it up, let Sam Howell throw. So that made me highly upset. But he did call a couple of good plays in there, like that deep ball to Terry McLaurin. Some of the read option stuff we ran, that was cool. Doesn't really matter anymore because he's on the way out anyway. And then he had a lot of bad play calls. He has some overthinking stuff that's what he does. That's been our biggest complaints about him as a fan base. And then even the players in that Sam 48 article that I talked about just a few days ago, they complained about him outsmarting themselves as well. I mean, that was the exact quote, outsmarting himself. And it's just, I saw a lot of that today as well, and that just seems to be something he just cannot get off. I mean, something will work, it will work, and then he'll just stop doing it. Like, why? So yeah, man, Scott Turner, it was fun while it lasted, but yeah, you gotta go, my boy. And then going to offensive line, I mean, Sam Cosmi, I know it's Micah Parsons, but golly, man. And I know you're banged up, but golly, man. Do I need to make right tackle a position of need in this offseason? Get it together. But I love what I saw from Chris Paul. Chris Paul took his opportunities and balled out. I loved a lot of the reps I saw from Chris Paul today at right guard. I thought he looked really good. Now, everybody else, Charles Leno held it down. Wasn't great, wasn't bad either, from what I remember. There were a lot of, our offensive line was pretty good. Again, like most of the games this season, pretty good at run blocking, a little scary in pass protection, but at times they gave Sam Howell some time to throw, to scan the field and throw it to the right guy. So they weren't great at all. I wouldn't even argue they were necessarily really good, but at least they weren't terrible today like they were against the Cleveland Browns and the 49ers. I mean, at least there was improvement there, except for Samuel. Samuel Cosme was getting beat. But so don't make me make right tackle a big team need. I'm gonna trust you. I'm going to go into this offseason assuming Samuel Cosme, when you get back healthy, you'll get right. Now, Samuel Cosme run blocking is always stellar. He's always one of the best run blocking tackles already, even only this short of a career that he's had. Even with the injuries that he's had, he's going to be a great run blocker no matter what. But we got to work on that pass protection, especially against faster, speedy guys like Michael Parsons that just seem to be giving him the business, man. Tight end, I felt like I wanted to see Armani Rogers a little bit more. I mean, we gave him one little trick play, a little end-around run out of the backfield. Other than that, I don't remember him being targeted or giving carries at all. I felt like this was a good time to try to showcase him and figure some things out. So I blame Scott Turner for that. And then Logan Thomas, I'm not going to lie, he looks like a shell of himself. He does. He was never the fastest guy, but he wasn't this slow, man. And he may be a cap couch. I think Chase Roulier, because he keeps getting hurt, may end up getting cut, and we may try to replace him in the offseason, free agency draft, whatever, save a lot of money there. Logan Thomas may end up getting cut because he's literally just a shell of himself. Kendall Fuller maybe, but I mean, after another pick six and a couple of plays that he made today, I think he's probably safe. But you could save over $10 million next year to pay somebody else if you release Kendall Fuller. But I think out of Chase Roulier, Logan Thomas, and Kendall Fuller may be the safest at this point, because again, Chase Roulier, you can't even depend on him to play half a season at this point. You can't even depend on his backups to play half a season at this point. We're down to the 4th to 5th string center again. It's really ridiculous. But yeah, man, I just think that whole situation is really interesting. Charles Leno's here for the long haul. We'll see about Andrew Norwell at left guard, even though I would like to upgrade that. We'll see. But we got to fit center. We got to figure out center, because Chase Roulier, I'm not depending on him no more. But going back to tight end, man, Logan Thomas, man, yeah, it's just, I hope John Bates and Cole Turner can step up. Armani Rogers and my boy, Curtis Hodges, I hope they can all step up, but they're probably going to prioritize bringing in a veteran that they know for a fact can at least have a certain floor to him. And then you have the ceiling guys, Armani Rogers, Curtis Hodges, Cole Turner, and I mean, John Bates is more of a floor guy, but still, you want to make sure you have a couple of tight ends that you know you can depend on, and then we can develop those other guys in time, and hopefully they can become star tight ends for us eventually. Or you can just go get my boy Darnell Washington from Georgia in the draft. I don't think people understand how much we really run our offense through him. We run to his side. We throw it to him all the time. We use him as a distraction. When he's hurt, our offense is literally not the same, even with Brock Bowers out there. So I would trade back up into the late first to get Darnell Washington. Y'all better stop playing. Then wide receivers, man, I don't know where maybe Curtis Samuel didn't play today, because I don't remember him being out there. But, and I'm sorry for that. I know I'm an analyst. I'm supposed to check for stuff like that. But Jahan Dotson and Terry McLaurin stole the show. So if Curtis Samuel was even out there, he wasn't really noticeable, because those guys balled out. And that's how you're supposed to use Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson all the time. That man, Terry McLaurin, had 3 catches for 74 yards. Jahan Dotson had 3 catches for 72. That's how it's always supposed to be. Oh, yeah, Curtis Samuel was out there. He had 1 reception for -2 yards and 1 run for -4 yards. Not a great way to end the season, but he was out there. And then Cam Sims, the 1 target he had was that terrible interception from Sam Howell in the back of the end zone. Poor Cam Sims, man. Underutilized all the time. Poor baby. But yeah, man, wide receiver wise, I mean, at the very least, we have 2 number 1 receivers in Jahan Dotson and Terry McLaurin. I feel like Jahan Dotson is easily a number 1 receiver. We just happen to have 2 of them. And I wouldn't be surprised if Sam Howell gains better chemistry with Jahan and Terry McLaurin. It looked like at times in that game, Jahan Dotson was our number 1 receiver and Terry was the second. But that's also probably because the Cowboys defense focused on stopping Terry. But nobody can stop Terry. There's no secondary that can stop a receiving core this great. I mean, like I said, I've said it several times. I've told y'all several times. There are guys out there that are very down on the Commanders as a team as a whole, like Mina Kimes, Chris Sims, a lot of these guys. But all of them admit that our receiving core is elite, and the offensive line, the play calling, and the quarterback play have held them back. But this could be a top 5 receiving core, and it's just sad to see that their talent and production isn't as good as it should be. And Sam Howell brought some of that out today, so I was really happy about that. And then running back wise, Antonio Gibson, Brian Robinson didn't play. Antonio Gibson with the IR. He got surgery on his foot. So he's like, I mean, he was for sure not playing. And Brian Robinson, I think they just went ahead and sat him. It wasn't worth it. Something like that. He may have somewhat of an injury as well. And I love first of all, going back to Terry McLaurin, captain of the team, arguably the best player of the team, and playing an entire meaningless game. Wasn't necessarily meaningless throughout the game, but the result was meaningless. And I mean, that's just shouts out to Terry McLaurin for that. Going back to running backs though, Jonathan Williams and Jared Patterson made a lot of their situations, especially Jared Patterson. Jonathan Williams was technically the starting running back. He had 14 carries for 32 yards. But meanwhile, Jared Patterson had 3 more carries with 17 and had 78 yards. I mean, he was balling. When Sam Howell got into a rhythm and then they started to be more afraid of our passing game, things just opened up wide open for Jared Patterson, especially after the read option. Jared Patterson looked great today. He should have been getting more carries than he was. But then again, you have Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson. What can you do? But I would like to see more Jared Patterson instead of Jonathan Williams in situations like that, where if Brian Robinson's tired, Antonio Gibson's a little banged up, get the ball to Jared Patterson, not necessarily Jonathan Williams. And I liked what I saw from Jared Patterson as far as returning the ball as well. And then going to the defensive side of the ball, I don't like how a lot of people are coming for Jack Del Rio's head. I mean, I'm still not the biggest fan of him, like real life personally, like outside of football. But football wise, he was holding his team together. We won a lot of games purely because of our defense. Like I said, we were winning in spite of the offense, especially in spite of the quarterback a lot this year. And the defense was the reason why. And the fact that, first of all, just this game isolated, you don't have your most important player in Cameron Curl. We've already seen that. You may not say Cameron Curl is our best defensive player, but he's easily the most important. You lose Jonathan Allen, it doesn't look like how our defense looks like without Cameron Curl. It's a huge difference. Suddenly, teams just score 30 points per game against us until this game where we only allowed the Cowboys to score 6. So we didn't have our best, at least the most important player on our defense, and definitely the best player in our secondary. We didn't have our best corner. We didn't have both of our starting linebackers. I mean, Jamin Davis, Cole Holcomb, neither of them played. We haven't had Cole Holcomb all year. We haven't had Benjamin St. Juste for at least a third of the year. Chase Young just started playing 3 games ago. And so he's mostly been out. We didn't have Jonathan Allen today. John Ridgeway even got hurt at some point in the game, and we still found a way to ball out on defense minus a couple of games. Literally, if you take away any games that Cameron Curl wasn't there for, our defense played at an elite level. As long as Cameron Curl was out there, our defense played at an elite level. Now, of course, Jack Del Rio, I'm looking at you a little side-eyed because it shouldn't just, when Cameron Curl's out, our defense shouldn't just become bottom 10 in the NFL. But at the same time, he has this defense playing very well, so I'm proud of Jack Del Rio. Now, granted, I think Jack Del Rio goes if Rivera goes, and I know Rivera's staying at least one more year, so I know Jack Del Rio's at least staying one more year. Scott Turner's on the way out, and I think between Jack Del Rio, Ron Rivera, and Scott Turner, Jack Del Rio's easily been the better coach this year because Ron Rivera, with some decisions he's made, with a lot of time management stuff, with challenges and calling timeouts, not calling timeouts, Ron Rivera's been pretty terrible with that this year, but Jack Del Rio's easily been our best and most consistent coach. Now, moving on to the defense. Defensive line played very well. Montez Sweat and Chase Young looked really good in the first half. Second half, I didn't really notice them as much, but they were doing their thing. Deron Payne played pretty well today. Again, no Jonathan Allen, so John Ridgeway played more until he got hurt. Then you started to see F.A. Obata and those other guys. I felt like they played well today. I mean, overall, when the defense only allowed 6 points to Dak Prescott and the starters, we had half of our defense gone, arguably like 5 of our best 8 defensive players out, at least. You know what I'm saying? And to allow the Cowboys with their starters, who were actually trying to win because they were trying to get the first seed, they actually had something to play for, unlike us. The fact that our defense played that well against them, I'm very proud. I'm definitely very proud of those guys. Shouts out to all of them, man. The defensive line, linebackers. Khaleke Hudson had himself a game, man. Moving on to Khaleke Hudson, man. He balled out today, man. I saw a lot from him that has me really excited. He was tied for the most tackles for the team. You had Derek Forrest, Danny Johnson, Khaleke Hudson, and David Mayo. All 7 tackles total today. It's a 4-way tie between all of those guys. I love what I saw from Khaleke Hudson today, man. If Khaleke Hudson can play like that all the time, him, Jamin Davis, and Cole Holcomb are actually a pretty good linebacker core, and I still feel like we should draft linebackers 2nd or 3rd round just to be safe. But if Khaleke Hudson can play like that, we're good. We're set at linebacker when everybody's healthy. The problem is, when is everybody going to be healthy? Cole Holcomb missed a lot of games today, and I'm not necessarily even surprised. Jamin Davis, the only game he missed was this game because they felt like it wasn't worth it. But, hey, man, we'll see. We'll see. I liked what I saw from Khaleke Hudson. I'll keep that noted in my head in the offseason. Still want to go linebacker one of the first 3 rounds. Remember, we don't have a 3rd round pick because we're going to give it to the Colts for Carson Wentz, but we get a 3rd round compensatory pick from Brandon Sheriff. So that's why I mentioned the 3rd round and all of that type of stuff. That's where it comes from. But also, the linebacker wise, I mean, I saw some plays from Khaleke Hudson. I don't really remember everybody else that may have been out there. I saw David Mail make a couple of plays, but Khaleke Hudson shined. And then secondary wise, Danny Johnson balled out. Kendall Fuller, you saw the pick 6 and the plays he was making. Wish he would catch everything that hit his hand, because then he would have had like 3-4 interceptions today. But I still felt like he was still really good with the pick 6, all of that great coverage, great reads, anticipating routes, all of that. Great game by Kendall Fuller. That's the best time to have a great game, because like I was saying, since weeks ago, Kendall Fuller may be one of those guys that get cut, because I mean, even if we keep Kendall Fuller, I want to draft corner in the 1st round like Joey Porter. Love Keely Ringo, but I prefer to play it safer with Joey Porter and get him in the 1st round if he makes it to the 14th pick. But yeah, man, Kendall Fuller, what a time to have a great game, because now we're like, oh, actually, nah, we'll hold on, we'll pay him that over 10 mil, because you know he looked like a little something to him. Kendall Fuller is your cornerback 2 or 3 is a great secondary, especially when Benjamin St. Juice is healthy and you add Joey Porter. That's unfair. And then Danny Johnson off the bench, man, what a time, man. He has so many great pass breakups today. I'm so proud of him. And then Christian Holmes had that great play on special teams to recover that fumble when the Cowboys punter dropped it. That was nice. And then safety-wise, Percy Butler shined today, man. Saw some plays against the run, saw some games against the pass, some plays against the pass, man. Really excited about his potential. I feel like ultimately him and Derek Forrest could be an elite safety combo, with Cameron Curl kind of being involved, playing in the box, playing back, playing wherever you need him at any given moment. Percy Butler, I feel like, could be more of a free safety. You kind of play him in the slot if you need to at times, and then Derek Forrest is more of a free safety, strong safety kind of thing as well. That is an elite trio of safeties right there. Percy Butler looks like how he looked today against the Cowboys, but with a larger sample size. He's able to stay consistent, do that more. And then Derek Forrest with Cameron Curl. We've noticed Derek Forrest looks like a god when Cameron Curl's on the field. When Cameron Curl's not out there, Derek Forrest takes a step back, because Cameron Curl is clearly like the Patrick to his SpongeBob taking the driver's test, I guess. But Derek Forrest looked pretty good today. He looked the best he's looked at by far with Cameron Curl out. But when Cameron Curl's out there, Derek Forrest is literally a different guy, especially with Benjamin St. Juice out there as well to bat the ball up. Derek Forrest gets those easy interceptions. So fully healthy, this secondary could be really, really good, especially if you add a Joey Porter and everybody gets back healthy. It could be dangerous, and especially with guys like Percy Butler stepping up. Elite speed, man. Elite closing speed. It's all about mentally. Can he catch up to the speed of the game of football? Can he start to understand certain concepts, not get faked out and juked out with certain things? Percy Butler can be serious, man. He could pretty much be a Bobby McCain replacement. Free safety, slot corner type of guy, hybrid. That's literally what he could be. Bobby McCain, I feel like he gets too much hate for this organization, from this fan base especially. But Percy Butler, ultimately, ideally, he ends up replacing Bobby McCain. And maybe Bobby McCain, you keep him on a really, really cheap contract, but you start to see Percy Butler play a little bit more and more as the season goes on, starting next year. I would be really excited to see a lot of Percy Butler. And then also special teams wise, Tressway always doing his thing. Kicking the ball in a way that punters don't want to catch it. I'm just going to give him credit. I mean, he's the #1 voted NFC punter. So I'm just going to give him credit for that muff punt against the Cowboys. Shouts out to Christian Holmes for catching it. Dax Milne looked pretty good returning today. He was like, wait a minute, this is the last game of the season? Oh, let me get right so I don't get replaced in this offseason. So they don't draft the guy to literally replace me as a backup receiver, but primarily as a punt returner. Let me step up. So Dax Milne arguably had some of his best returns this season today. You could tell he was playing for his job. And then Joey Sly, yeah, we got to talk about it. Let's talk about it. No, don't go nowhere, Joey Sly. Let's talk about it. What happened today, man? 2 of 4 on field goals. Your longest is a 29th, and you missed an extra point, 2 of 3. Like, what happened today, man? What happened today? You left what, 7 points on the board today? And those kicks were easy too. I mean, you missed like one 48-yarder or something like that, but one of them was like a short 30-something, 20-something yarder. And then you missed the extra point. Boy, if we lost this game, they would have been on your head. I think by the end, because you made the last couple of field goals and extra points, a lot of people may have forgotten, and maybe Ron Rivera's like, I'm like, okay, at least he ended the game fairly strong. But boy, I felt like going into the game, Joey Sly's job was completely safe. you were better off just not kicking it all today. You were better off just saying, ow, my knee hurt. Y'all gonna need to bring Brian Johnson back to kick for me today. You were better off pulling something like that than going out there and missing kicks, because you didn't even have a job to lose. You had the job 100% secured, in my opinion, going into this game and going into the offseason. But the way you were missing kicks today, I don't know. It's a little shaky now. So, Joey Sly, you might have messed up. We'll see how they evaluate you in the offseason. I'm a little worried. I'm definitely a little worried there, because, whoo, that was a little scary. Also, shouts out to the Commanders, just random stats. Third down wise, our defense only allowed them to convert 4 of 18, but our offense only converted 3 of 14, which is not good at all. We only allowed them to convert 1 of their 3 fourth down attempts. Not bad at all, man. I'll take it. We won time of possession, 36 minutes 12 seconds to their 23 minutes 48 seconds, but that's what we've done to most people, even in losses. We were better, more disciplined than them. 2 penalties for 10 yards, 6 penalties for 74 yards on them. And then rushing the ball, we ran 151 yards. They only had 64. Passing the ball, we had 158 to their 118. And again, Dak Prescott played till 5 minutes left in the fourth. So don't act like Cooper Rush was out there all game, Cowboys fans. So shouts out to the Commanders defense for holding it down. Shouts out to all of those stats. I wanted to make sure I gave y'all those before we left. Jared Patterson had 1 kickoff return for 27 yards. Looked good in special teams as well. I like Jared Patterson. He should stick around as a backup running back and at the very least a good returner. And then to close it, the only thing I'm really sad about as far as this team goes is J.D. McKissic, man, because he could be on the Bills right now on a Super Bowl run potentially and things like that. At the last second, he came back to sign with us, and then we barely used him for a lot of games, and then he got hurt. And then even when he got back slightly healthy, I think he got back healthy. But either way, I wouldn't be surprised if J.D. McKissic had less than 10 carries this season. And that's just so sad, because he easily could have just been on the Bills and just coasting, chilling. I mean, granted, he would have been taking snaps away from my Georgia Bulldog, James Cook. I wouldn't have liked that. And I was happy when we brought him back. But it just sucks because Scott Turner barely utilized him. And I know it's difficult. I'm not trying to take away blame from Scott Turner, but Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson are dynamic guys. But I felt like when you were done with Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson, that should have been J.D. McKissic getting those third carries and getting those passes out of the backfield and things like that. But I mean, if you're not going to use him, you might as well go ahead and throw Jared Patterson out there. And I like Jonathan Williams. He looks good too. But Jared Patterson has a little spark to him that I kind of like. I'm starting to become addicted to. So I want to see that a little bit more. But yeah, man, I'm really feel sorry for J.D. McKissic. Hopefully he can become more involved next year, or we can give him away to a team that's going to utilize him more, because I feel like he deserves it. I feel like he's a better player than how we used him this year. And I'm going to definitely blame Scott Turner for a lot of that. Also, I'm going to blame injuries as well, but definitely blaming Scott Turner, because even before the injury, he wasn't using them. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Season finale. Shouts out to Sam Howell for beating the Cowboys and talking trash afterwards. Definitely let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video in the comment section. Please leave a like on this video if you liked it, if you learned anything. And of course, man, I appreciate all of my supporters. Shouts out to all of my sponsors, especially my Pro Bowl sponsors whose names you see scrolling on the screen right now. Catch y'all later. I'm out.